Hello. For this video, I thought I would tell you about my first book, Transubstantiation, which is on sale right now on my website, theworstbuddhist.com, for just $9.99. I wanted to tell you a little bit about how this book came to be and how I ended up becoming a writer. When my daughter Rowan was 5 years old, she suffered a stroke and it left her with some permanent disabilities. It was one of the darkest periods of my life. It was the nightmare call that every parent just dreads. Your kid is being life-flighted to a hospital and nobody knows why or what happened. In the days after, like so many doctors would come to see her, because it's really unusual for a 5-year-old to suffer a stroke, especially when as severe as she did, and just nobody could understand why it happened. And unfortunately, there just wasn't an answer. Like, to this day, we still don't know. 25 years later, we still don't know exactly what happened. But while it was going on, I didn't handle it very well. And I kept telling myself, in some ways, I'm glad that this is all that happened, because if it had been worse, like God forbid she had died or something like that, I honestly don't think I would have been able to handle it. I just don't think I have that capacity within me. Well, as I was growing up, I had this cousin named Mike, and Mike's a year older than me, and in almost every way, Mike was the antithesis of who I was. He was the kid who was great at school, he was great in athletics, he fit in socially. I just wasn't any of those things, but I wanted to be, and so naturally I emulated Mike. He was my hero. He is who I wanted to be. I was always just the Robin to his Batman, but I was thrilled to be it. Mike also had a daughter who was the same age as Rowan, and when she was a teenager, in a horrible train accident, she perished. And I watched how Mike dealt with that, and naturally I reflected on Rowan having her stroke, and it just made me wonder, like, if I was in Mike's shoes, I couldn't handle it, especially hearing him tell the story. There's no way I would have been able to handle it. So I kind of didn't know what to do with all those emotions, so I was working a job where I had a lot of time alone. I was a security guard, and so I would spend 12 hours a day in a building all by myself, and frankly, there's only so much Netflix that you can watch or so many books you can read. So I started writing, and I didn't plan on sharing this with anybody. When I finally got done, I gave it to Mike to read. He was the only person who I thought I would share this with, and when he read it, he suggested that I put it out there, that I share it with some other people. And I was reluctant to do so, because that wasn't what I thought. But at his suggestion, I shared it with some other people, and they also responded. They responded well to it, and they suggested that I put it out there. So I decided to. Ironically, while I was editing this book and getting it ready to publish, my best friend Larry, who is also, there's a character based on Mike and there's a character based on Larry in this book. My best friend Larry had a daughter who perished in a traffic accident, and so I got to watch these two people who I just hold tremendous respect for go through this traumatic loss, the loss of a child. They say there's nothing worse than that, and I got to see how they dealt with it, with poise and strength, and hope that in some way I can end up being that type of person at some point in my life. So I decided to go forward and publish the book, and I put it out there, and fortunately it's gotten some really great feedback, and enough so that it made me want to continue to be a writer. So the story centers around two people. There's Hattie and there's Mike. Hattie is a nurse who had a daughter at a very young age, and because of that, it's just been her and her daughter for most of their lives. She hasn't been dating, she hasn't done anything like this for a very long time, and so that part of her has kind of just been turned off. She doesn't quite know how to function from that, or aspect. Mike, the character in the book, is the same thing. After the loss of a child, he kind of shuts down and doesn't quite know how to connect with people or anything like that. But these two find each other, and they have a mutual attraction, and they both respect and like each other, but they kind of wonder if that romantic aspect of their life is something that has just slid them by at this point, or if there's something that they can open themselves up to and potentially find happiness and love with one another. But before things get to develop that point, Hattie has this daughter who's in high school who one night is the victim of an attempted gang rape, and Mike ends up saving her life from this. You know, he ends up saving her from the attack. The character Mike has some martial arts skills that nobody really knew about, but during the attack he ends up getting quite severely injured. And so in Hattie's worst nightmare, she's working her shift as the ER nurse, and all of a sudden here comes Mike and her daughter Alexis into the hospital after this brutal attack. And when it's over and the dust is starting to settle, they have this choice of like, are they going to let this horrific event define who they are? Are they going to let that kind of shut them down? Are they going to use that to build walls around themselves? Or are they possibly going to grow from the opportunity and step into something larger? Pretty much all of my books, that's kind of a central theme. There's an event that happens that pushes somebody out of their comfort zone, and they have that choice of like, are we going to step into something larger than what we are, or are we going to shrink back from that and kind of hide? So obviously Hattie decides to step forward and try to step into a bigger picture of life and not let this destroy her. With the help of Mike and with the help of two very unlikely spiritual gurus, there is Larry, who is a Catholic priest who's also a bodybuilder, who also has a very childlike presence. And then there's David, a Buddhist monk, who has some martial arts abilities. These two help Hattie and Mike and Alexis move beyond what happened to them and find a new way to deal with life. If you've read the book The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which was one of my very favorite books, this is kind of my version of The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. A lot of my teachings from Buddhism and a lot of my experiences in the Marines ended up in this book, and some of the things that have influenced me in my life positively are in here as well. Some of the life lessons that I've learned, I'm sharing in this book. Like I said, it's on sale this month at my website, theworstbuddhist.com, for $9.99. If you're a Kindle reader, it's on sale on Amazon for just 99 cents. If you buy one from my website, though, I would love to sign a copy for you and send one to you, and I hope you enjoy the book.